Hello everyone, and welcome to another video. Today we are going to continue talking about the Civil War, but in this video specifically we're going to be talking about African Americans and their role in the war. Emancipation in the Civil War. Despite Lincoln's efforts to downplay the issue of slavery, abolitionists kept up the pressure to end slavery. Soon, Lincoln himself recognized the need to include freedom for enslaved Americans among the goals of the war. His actions helped bring about the beginning of the end of slavery in the United States. At the same time, African American soldiers joined the fight for freedom. So at first, Lincoln did not want to address the issue of slavery. He was trying to downplay it, he's trying to make it not look at how important it was, but he soon realized that this war was being fought over slavery, and he needed to bring an end to it. Union troops meet enslaved African Americans. On the battlefield, Union officers faced a dilemma: what to do with enslaved African Americans who came under their control. It was absurd, argued these officers, to return slaves to their owners. Early on, Union General Benjamin Butler had gathered hundreds of African American refugees into his camps and set them to manual labor. He declared the fugitives under his protection to be contraband, or captured war supplies. General John Fremont went a step further, declaring that enslaved people who came under his command in Missouri were freed. Fearing retaliation from the border states, Lincoln reversed Fremont's order. So Lincoln is still trying to keep the border states happy. You know, he doesn't want to lose more states to the Confederacy. So he's doing what he thinks will be not a hostile action toward them. Massachusetts newspaper publisher William Lloyd Garrison was one of the nation's leading abolitionists, and this is a picture of him here. Lincoln proposes a plan for emancipation. Lincoln realized he could not avoid the slavery issue for long. He secretly began working on a plan for the emancipation of enslaved African Americans living in Confederate states. In the summer of 1862, he shared his ideas with a surprised cabinet. The members generally supported Lincoln's plan, but agreed that its announcement should wait. After the Union failure at the Second Battle of Bull Run, such a proclamation might look like an act of desperation. What was needed was a major Union victory. Several weeks later, Lincoln got his opportunity. Victory at Antietam provides an opportunity. After his army's recent victories, General Lee was brimming with confidence. In early September 1862, he led his troops into Maryland, the border state where many favored the South. Lee hoped to inspire a pro-Confederate uprising. A victory on Union soil might also spur European recognition of the Confederacy. Lee also hoped to acquire an abundance of food supplies for his hungry army in an area unmolested by war. Lee's invasion did not go according to plan. On September 8th, the general issued a proclamation to the people of Maryland that invited them to ally themselves with the South. But Marylanders responded to the invitation with far less enthusiasm than Lee had anticipated. So Lee issues this proclamation to the people of Maryland saying that they are welcome and free to join the Confederacy. And he thought that he was going to get a bunch of people to switch sides here. He thought he was going to get Maryland to flip to the Confederacy, but this does not go according to how he had hoped. A few days later, Union soldiers found a copy of Lee's battle plan wrapped around some cigars at an abandoned rebel campsite. As a result, Lee lost the crucial element of surprise. When McClellan reviewed the orders, he exclaimed, "Here is a paper with which, if I cannot whip Bobby Lee, I will be willing to go home." The two armies converged at Sharpsburg, Maryland, and McClellan's troops fanned out near Antietam Creek. On September 17th, Union troops attacked Lee's army in 3 phases, moving from one side of the Confederate line to the other. By the end of the day, more than 23,000 soldiers lay dead or wounded. The Battle of Antietam marked the bloodiest single day of the Civil War. With his army exhausted and Maryland still in the Union, Lee retreated to Virginia. Though Union losses exceeded Confederate losses, Lincoln had the victory he needed to move forward with emancipation. So the Battle of Antietam is the single bloodiest day in the Civil War. Now, it's not the bloodiest battle. There's actually a battle that has much more dead or wounded at the end of it, but the Battle of Antietam is the bloodiest single day of the Civil War. The Emancipation Proclamation. On September 22, 1862, Lincoln formally announced the Emancipation Proclamation. Issued as a military decree, it freed all enslaved people in states still in rebellion against the Union after January 1, 1863. It did not, however, apply to loyal border states or to places that were already under Union military control. Lincoln hoped that the proclamation might convince some southern states to surrender before the January 1st deadline. Many Northerners responded to the Emancipation Proclamation with great excitement. "We shout for joy that we live to record this righteous decree," rejoiced Frederick Douglass. Some who had once criticized Lincoln for inaction now praised his name and held rallies in honor of the proclamation, such as an African-American minister in Philadelphia. "The morning dawns, the long night of sorrow and gloom is past. The proclamation has gone forth, and God is saying to this nation, man must be free. Your destiny as white men and ours as black men are one and the same." Jonathan C. Gibbs, January 1st, 1863. Critics on both sides respond. Others were less enthusiastic. William Lloyd Garrison grumbled that what is still needed is a proclamation distinctly announcing the total abolition of slavery. British abolitionists applauded the president's move, but also wondered about Lincoln's conviction, since he attacked slavery only in areas over which he had no control. Lincoln also received criticism in Congress. Many Republicans felt the proclamation had not gone far enough, while many Democrats felt that it was too drastic a step. The proclamation may have been one factor leading to Democratic gains in the fall congressional election. So some people said that that the Emancipation Proclamation was too much. Others said it didn't go far enough. This 1864 painting depicts Lincoln's presentation of the Emancipation Proclamation to members of his cabinet. Secretary of War Edward Stanton sits at the far left, and Secretary of State William Seward sits facing Lincoln. The proclamation changes the war. Although the Emancipation Proclamation did not actually free a single slave, it was an important turning point in the war. For Northerners, it redefined the war as being about slavery. For white Southerners, the call to free the slaves ended any desire for a negotiated end to the war. Confederate leaders now determined that they must fight to the end. For African Americans in the North, the proclamation made them eager to join the Union Army and fight against slavery. Even before Lincoln's decree, growing demands by African Americans and a growing need for soldiers on the front lines had led the Union to reconsider its ban on African American soldiers. Just 2 months before the proclamation, Congress had passed the Militia Act, mandating that African American soldiers be accepted into the military. So here we see for the first time African Americans being welcomed and brought into the military. With the Emancipation Proclamation, the Union moved from allowing African American troops to actively recruiting them. African American and abolitionist leaders were asked to seek volunteers. The abolitionist governor of Massachusetts enthusiastically supported the formation of the all-African American 54th Massachusetts Regiment. By war's end, more than 180,000 African American volunteers had served in the Union military. The Confederacy considered drafting slaves and free African Americans in 1863 and 1864, but most Southerners opposed their enlistment. This drummer had been enslaved prior to his service in the 79th U.S. Colored Infantry. So even though African Americans are being brought in and welcomed into the military, they are kept in their own separate divisions. So while this was a step in the right direction, it still had division within it. Earning respect and honor. Racist attitudes left many whites with low expectations for African American troops, but performance in battle proved these expectations to be false. In June 1863, accounts appeared of a battle in Port Hudson, Mississippi, the first major test for African American soldiers. A few weeks later, the 54th Massachusetts allowed Robert Gould Shaw, their respected white officer, into battle at Fort Wagner in Charleston Harbor. During the unsuccessful assault, Shaw and many of his men were killed. Nevertheless, the 54th had earned respect for its discipline and courage. One soldier received the Congressional Medal of Honor, the first of almost 24 African American soldiers to be decorated for bravery. So even though their commanding officer had been killed, this division, this regiment, continued to fight on even without their commanding officer. And Congressional Medal of Honor was given to 20 of the soldiers here to be decorated for bravery. Still, African American troops faced prejudice. They were usually assigned menial tasks such as cooking, cleaning, and digging latrines. If you don't know what a latrine is, imagine a porta-john that was just a ditch. That's what a latrine is. They were dug because, you have these camps of all these soldiers. Well, they got to go to the bathroom somewhere, so they would dig a ditch, and that was your toilet. And often African American troops were assigned the duties to dig these ditches. So obviously you can tell, even though they were allowed into the military, they still faced a lot of prejudice. They often served the longest guard duty and were placed in exposed battle positions. It took a 3-year effort to win equal pay. African American soldiers also knew that if captured, they would be killed. In one bloody incident, Confederates massacred nearly 200 African American soldiers who were trying to surrender at Fort Pillow, Tennessee. Nevertheless, African Americans supported the Union in hundreds of battles, and some 70,000 lost their lives. So, these soldiers fought with the knowledge that if they were captured, they would not be kept as prisoners. They would be killed on the spot. There was, as I said there was one battle where nearly 200 African American soldiers were trying to surrender, and they were killed instantly. Enslaved people support the Union. Enslaved African Americans in the South also played an important role in the war, finding a variety of ways to passively or actively help the Union forces. White owners often abandoned plantations for the safety of southern cities, leaving trusted slaves to manage the farm. Advancing Union forces often enlisted these African Americans to produce food for Northern troops. Other African Americans used their familiarity with the terrain to serve as spies or scouts for Union armies. Sometimes emancipated slaves organized their own military units. Regiments of former slaves appeared in such places as South Carolina, Kansas, and Missouri. Across the South, ambitious slaves seized the opportunity to begin to shape their own civilian lives. Some demanded and got wages for their work. Others simply abandoned their masters, fleeing to Union camps or to the North or West. They turned Lincoln's promise of freedom into a reality. Okay guys, that's going to be it for this video. If you have any question about anything we went over, you know how to get a hold of me. I hope everybody's having a great day, and I'll see you again real soon. Bye.